Hi, my name is Lulu. I'm a PhD student at Brock University. This is Autistic Resistance to Rhetorical Repression, Lifting the Weight of Assumed Suffering. Now, the first thing I will say, which is normally sort of just a disclaimer, but in this case, sort of the whole topic of my presentation. When I talk about autism, I talk about being autistic. So I don't talk about having autism or being with autism. And the reason for that, I hope, is helpfully illustrated by this Autism Sketches comic, one of my favorites. When we say we are autistic, what we mean is that the way our brains and bodies and body minds and neurologies are wired, are connected, and process things is not typical. The way that we move through the world, interact with people, understand each other, and understand ourselves, all of these are informed by or moved by or underlain by autism, by being autistic. And without autistic people, for this reason, there sort of is no autism. It isn't a separate thing that can be added or put or held. It is the way that some of us are. Now, this is the reasoning that what is often called identity first language is preferred by the vast majority of autistic people in every poll that has been done in recent years. Similarly, I will say non-speakers or non-speaking. I will not refer to non-verbal. The reason for that is this is what has been asked of us of non-speakers. So here I have a quote originally quoted in Neuroclastic by Tejas Rao Sankar, who says, "The topic of what to call autistics powers the future momentum of our lives. I hate being called non-verbal. It shuts us out of the places we belong. It lowers the places we are in. The places we try to get to are very loud. They are kept for the people with loud voices. Let us be non-speakers. That's the gateway to who we are capable of being." And again, this is all about how the rhetoric, the framing of autistic people, of non-speaking people, this all impacts what people actually have access to doing and what world people are able to experience. So where does some of this rhetoric come from? Well, all over the place. So you might hear about autism from news media, from social media, from government communications, from education or clinical settings, from educators or clinicians, from fictional TV shows, from films, from documentaries, from charities or nonprofits. And those are sort of the first ones we'll take a look at really quick. There are a couple of examples of advertisements from, quote, autism charities here. One of them has a young autistic boy in an astronaut helmet looking up amazed at the stars, and it says, "I am autistic," and autistic is crossed out, and it says going to be an astronaut, as if it is impossible to dream such things while seeing yourself as someone autistic, while seeing autism as a part of you. How could you possibly imagine or believe in yourself to be something that we consider incredible, that we consider amazing? We also have another young boy here trapped in a baby bottle, being swallowed up by this wave of expectations and of needs and of troubles. And all of this, again, is in blue in this case, which plays again into this sort of sadness and this tragic burden that is autism as this problem and as this weight. We are also very familiar, of course, with the puzzle piece and the idea that autistic children's minds are mysterious or are unknowable. The sort of tears and the crying are also, unfortunately, have been associated with being autistic. One of the original sort of anti-autistic charities calling itself an autistic charity, the National Autistic Society's logo literally was a puzzle piece with a crying child in it. This is now often brought up as an example of the rhetoric we are trying to move away from, and that in some places we have been able to move away from. Another example is a rhetoric about parents of autistic kids. Now, I can demonstrate this with a few memes. This one says, "God found some of the strongest women and made them autism moms." autism mom like a normal mom, except much stronger. Again, it's pretty obvious how this burden, this weight is being played here in this rhetoric, and how in order to manage being a mother of an autistic child, you're going to need some big muscles. You're going to need to lift a lot. It's heavy. And this, again, is incredibly clear rhetoric playing into this idea of autism as this hugely burdensome problem. Another example, directly related to embodiment and how autistic people move through the world, is autistic play. So for example, autistics often will line things up in a row, and this is not considered appropriate or typical play with these items or objects. And this often will lead to people being interrupted or redirected when they're doing these things. Here, for example, we have someone sort of embodying what this one charity believes autism looks like, which is lining things up, screaming, and having your hands over your ears. Apparently, this child is very distressed at this time. And this one says, signs of autism in children you need to know. Again, it's this red flag warning rhetoric. If something like this is happening, it's wrong, it's bad, you need to be looking out for a child acting like this. Similarly, with body language, we have if somebody is a little bit more withdrawn, then this might be sort of labeled as pathological compared to a child who is sitting sort of, quote, appropriately cross-legged with his head up and then is labeled no autism. Altogether, all of these embodied sort of flags and signs that are seen as negative. We have eye contact, which of course is a very culturally based issue, but does for autistic people often have to do with like sensations of pain or of anxiety when making eye contact that make it incredibly difficult to focus on anything else. Of course, this is not included in here. It is just a symptom. It is just bad that the child does not make eye contact. Similarly with having favorite objects that you don't want to put down, and similarly with having a lack of motor speech or language, which we know now is most likely due to apraxia and motor coordination. However, here it is just seen as a symptom of autism, this terrible, burdensome thing. Together, all of this paints what is the most common sort of view of autism in a lot of these media pieces, which is this scared, sad little boy trapped alone behind glass, looking at all of the things that they can't do as this wave overtakes them. Now, this is all a part of what is called neuronormativity. So the ways that we talk about and collectively understand neurological and affective divergence, so emotional divergence and expressive divergence from what is considered the norm, these are harmful to everybody, not just to autistic people, not just to neurodivergent people, but to neurotypical people too. The idea that there is an ideal way of moving through the world and being and presenting yourself hurts absolutely everybody who at any time steps outside of those bounds. For autistic young people, this normativity tends to lead to mistreatment, discrimination, ostracization, and violence or punishment through systems which hold power over the necessities of life. So this is education, healthcare, housing, employment, etc. One way to escape the weight of this neuronormativity is through education and what we call neuroaffirming and neuroinformed education. And in my opinion, what's important is education from autistic people about neurodivergence, about embracing the ways that we can divergently be and divergently move through the world. And I think this can be the key to escaping some of the heavy burdens that neuronormativity places on young people. A lot of this will have to do with troubling or challenging what is considered appropriate, what is considered a reasonable way to play and to move through the world. For example, I have a comic from Happy Hands here, who I highly recommend, where a young autistic girl is flapping her arms and moving through a space and imagining and sort of dreaming things up. And an adult says, how sad that she does not know how to play appropriately. And the response to this is, how sad that you lack the imagination to see outside of your perspective. And this is really important because it will take imagination on everyone's part to move towards each other when we experience the world differently, and to stop painting each other as wrong for experiencing the world in ways different from how we experience the world. Now, fortunately, we do have a lot of media pieces and steps towards change and steps towards resistance to this challenging perspective of autism and this burdensome perspective. For example, this article by Jennifer White Johnson, Autistic Joy as an Act of Resistance. We have Greta Thunberg saying, I'm very proud to be autistic. This is something that even just a number of years ago was so taboo to say because autism is supposed to be this awful negative thing. We have influencers like Chloe Hayden, who is also an actress. We have a non-speaker, Brie Guerra, as an example of a non-speaking advocate. And these folks will get on social media, will tell stories that show the joy of being autistic, that show beautiful moments, that show parts of the world that autistic people see differently, and not framing those as a burden, not framing those as a symptom of a problem, but just as different ways of being. We're also fortunate we have things like A Day with No Words, which is a picture storybook by Tiffany Hammond about a day in the life of a young Black non-speaking boy. Similarly, we have from Pixar a short called Loop, which is one of the first on a broad sort of global scale to demonstrate alternative communication, alternative ways of moving through the world, sharing feelings and expressing and experiencing the world around us, and sort of having that be shown through the eyes of someone who is just realizing that these things can be different, and ends up making friends with Renee, the main character. These are new advancements and developments compared to the decades and decades and decades where autism has just been this awful, tragic burden. And this resistance to that weight is so important. Now, with this said, how might you react when you learn that a child is autistic? Might you say, I'm so sorry, or poor kid, are they okay? Or that must be so hard for you? Unfortunately, these would be playing into these tragic burden narratives, these stories where autism is the problem. However, if you were to respond by saying, congratulations, or cool, or could you let me know more about what that means for them or for you? In this case, you might be resisting these narratives. You might be pushing back. You might be seeing autistic life as valuable and autistic experiences as not inherently negative and not inherently tragic. And this kind of resistance to this weighted burden can lead to encouragement of divergent thriving. This means that when people are happy, when people are expressive, when people need to try to work differently, and it doesn't look how people expect it to, it doesn't look within the typical, it doesn't look normal, we encourage it anyways. We push back against any of those expectations, and we work to make sure that everybody who can thrive in any way is presented with the opportunities and the access to thrive in those ways without being shamed, without being told they're wrong, and without having to change themselves to fit into the narratives that we expect them to. Now, I appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking about much more.